Hey everyone, Andrew here, and today I've got a really unique interview experience for you because I'm going to be presenting a really cool conversation that I had with a friend of mine. And the thing that makes this so interesting and so different from what you might have seen on my channel before is on the surface, it's going to look like a lot of what we each say disagrees with the other person. And I think on a certain level, there are ways you can kind of look at it that way. But by a different token, if you actually look at the way things are, and if you look at how we actually see the world of cause and effect and where the law of attraction comes into play, I think you might actually notice it's really just a difference in the words we use and even our definitions of those words. So I welcome you to kind of, sit back, relax, and just enjoy what's going to be a real cerebral conversation, listen to both perspectives, and see what you can glean from it, see where you find the value, because understand there is a lot of gold that me and Marx kind of hit in and dropped in to different points throughout this conversation. So thank you in advance for watching and listening, and please enjoy this one. This was really fun to kind of go back and forth with him and get his awesome perspective. And by all means, once you're done, make up your own mind. You might like my explanation, you might like his, or you might realize like, hey, it's the same thing with different words and different definitions meant to get to those concepts. So that's all I'm going to give as a preamble. But again, please sit back, relax, enjoy, and thank you as always for watching and listening. I appreciate you, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you again soon. Here's me chatting it up with Marx. Ready to dive in, my friend?
Let's do it.
All right, in that case, hey everyone, Andrew here, otherwise known as the guy who wrote the last Law of Attraction book you'll ever need to read. And I am joined by a very special guest. And I'm not going to give too much to an intro because I think I'll let him speak for himself. But we were having a prior conversation a few weeks ago, more about business. And we were just going down a different road in terms of different pathways of conversations. And it became clear that law of attraction might be a fun topic for me to speak with this person for you all. And this gentleman here, Marx Acosta-Rubio, he helps successful people double their income and double their time off in 12 months or less. That's all I'll say there. And you can probably tell he's all about efficiency. He's all about getting the most out of what you're doing. And I would assume, I'll let him speak for himself, but he's all about doing it in a strategically way that's still in line with who you are. But without any further ado, Marx, thank you so much for being here, my friend, and welcome to my YouTube channel.
Andrew, thanks, buddy. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. And it's interesting because whenever I have these, and we'll see if I've ever contradicted myself in a prior one, but I often know where I want to start. And with you, I almost don't, because there are so many different roads that we can go down. But I guess given, what this channel is and the people that are watching, what how has the law of attraction, if in any way, been an impact in your life, in your view?
So it's a great question. And I want you to define the law of attraction for me so we have like a good basis of understanding if we're talking about the same thing.
Perfect. So the way I often define it is, I'll say law of attraction is based on the premise that everything is energy. Your energy, I'm energy, our thoughts are energy. And through that understanding, energy vibrates at a frequency, and like frequencies attract like frequencies, meaning law of attraction just means like attracts like. But I always give it in the context of we are at agency here, we are at cause, meaning us knowing this, we can choose thoughts that we know will vibrate at a certain frequency that will ideally invite better circumstances and better experiences and better events into our lives.
Got it. Okay. So I'm going to tell you that I believe that that definition, as great as it may be, is missing half of the equation.
Awesome. Awesome. Let me know what where are we missing here? This is perfect. I love this.
I think, and I'm going to be a little bit controversial, and I haven't read your book. I haven't. Thank you. I haven't read it yet. I didn't want to read it because I wanted to give you my sort of opinion because I've read so much about that and I've done so much with it that I wanted to give you sort of my take on it, and then you and I could decide whether or not we mesh or not philosophically and also in behavior. So I think the law of attraction has done more damage than it has done good
Mm.
for probably, I don't know, more than a century now, because you can go back to the Bible, you can go back to Wallace Wattles, back to Napoleon Hill, back to just about anybody that talked about success and happiness. There is some form of law of attraction. Even Emerson, right? The great philosopher, poet, whatever you want to call him, talked a lot about the law of attraction. However, interestingly enough, he wasn't referring to law of attraction the same way we refer to it now. Give me one second. I got to get that done. Okay, good. I'm back. I had to go attract a tissue to my hand because it was all wet from that drink. Anyway, so What do you think means when I say that most people have done more damage than good with the law of attraction? What do you think I mean by that?
Well, I hear that I think people have misunderstood it, therefore have misapplied it and also mistaught it.
Okay, great. So how have they misunderstood it?
Well, oftentimes, I mean, there's a lot of ways. One way is people think that if they just sit on their couch and think that that's all it takes, they don't realize that there's any action that may need to be taken, which by the way, I guess I was missing from my definition. So quick little add-on that I often say here is I do believe that you can sit on your couch to a point, meaning I'm all for sitting on your couch for a while because I believe that that will bring inspired thoughts that will take you to action. So I think action is a necessary element so far as it's action taken out of inspiration rather than taken out of lack or impatience or frustration. But I also do believe that you can give yourself a little space before then to let the ideas percolate, to open up, to allow whatever inspiration and whatever motivations might pop in for you.
All right. So I'm glad you added the caveat of action because action is super important, but we have to be parsimonious with our action. And so let me tell you why I think the law of attraction has caused so much grief. Now, you know this, but the audience doesn't know that I built a company, many years ago to one of America's fastest growing company, Inc. 500, fastest growing. It was actually number 383, then Inc. 5000 three times, and I made a fortune, then lost it, and made it again. And so I was dealing in the real world, right, in the business world, belly to belly. We were primarily selling computer supplies via the phone and all these kind of cool stuff that happened. So ultimately, I got to see this sort of law of attraction in action, not just from my own perspective, but with my employees. And the biggest problem with the law of attraction is people think that like attracts like, as you mentioned earlier, that if they think it, so it shall be. And so they have all these great little fortune cookie components about, if you think it, as a man thinketh by James Allen, so forth and so on. If you just got this idea of these thoughts that it's actually going to happen, the truth of the matter is it's not even close to that. In fact, doing that is more harm than doing good. Now, why would you think that is? Why would sitting in your couch exclusively do more harm than good?
Mm. I mean, I'm dying to hear your answer for this, but I mean, I would say the reason being is because here we are in a three-dimensional tangible space, and the whole point is to take action, and without that things just aren't going to happen. That isn't how we're existing right now. We're existing in a three-dimensional, physically tangible space.
So let me think of it this way. Imagine that you, as Andrew, want to increase your income to X, right? It's now
Mm,
Y, you want to give it to X. And you sit on your couch and you think, my income's now this, my income's now this, my income's now this. And then you kind of go about your day and you take normal action. Now, what happens is you have cognitive dissonance between what you actually want and what you actually are. And that dissonance creates angst inside your body. Your brain goes, why aren't
mm,
I there yet? What's going on? What's happening? And so then it creates the law of distraction or the law of not attraction. It does the opposite effect because now you're angry, you're annoyed, your state of mind, which is key, by the way, is now one of cognitive dissonance. Or you walk around the earth in this idea of fake belief that you're going to get it. Oh, I'm going to double my income, I'm going to triple my income. And now you have lack of activity to get that to happen. So what we need to do is to find the law of attraction in a very different component, which goes like this, in my opinion. You think about what it is you truly want. I want this. Then you act as if that is inevitable. Not that's already happening,
mm,
it's inevitable going to happen. Now, if you act as if it's inevitable, what will you do? You will take the necessary actions and steps, moving the direction of your goals, your destination, whatever you want, which will then create opportunities and like-minded people to help you achieve that. So, this whole thing, act as if. Don't act as if you have it because it's a little bit kind of funky. You have to act as if it's inevitable it's going to happen.
mm,
There's a big difference in that, right? So let me give an example. So everything you can think about in your life that you've achieved, like really achieved, not fake stuff. If you go back to a decision when you decided to actually do it and you began to take action on it, in your mind, you're like, well, it's inevitably it's going to happen for me. It's something's going to happen. And Napoleon Hill talks about this in I think the second chapter of Think You're Rich called faith. So faith is taking action despite the fact that you don't see it, right? So it's not present yet. Let's say you want to buy a Ferrari and there's no Ferrari in your garage yet. But if you really believe that you're going to get a Ferrari, then you're going to act if it's inevitable, and that will make you do the necessary steps and actions, which will then allow you to iterate. Now let's back up a little bit because I want to confuse your audience a little bit more before we give them sort of the pinnacle next action. You talked about sitting in the couch and thinking. Now we talked about the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, or you can call it whatever you want, whether subconscious, unconscious, other than conscious, superconscious, doesn't really make a difference, right? But we can decipher the brain into three parts: the archiving brain, which is the subconscious mind; the thinking brain, which is the neocortex; and of course, then you've got the caveman brain, which is the reptilian brain. And you and I have had this discussion before. So now, how does that relate to the law of attraction? Well, imagine you have three little personalities inside your head. The Rodin's thinker, the guy sits on a rock and he thinks. This is the part of your brain that goes, gee, how do I solve that problem? How do I figure this out? It's how do I do all these things, right? And it tries to think and it tries to sort of use logic and reason, all these cool things. The archiving brain is sort of this librarian, but we'll get to her or him in a minute. Then you've got the reptilian brain, which is the caveman. He or she has the 5 Fs: freeze, fight, flight, fornicate, and feed, right? So to the freeze, they fight, they flight, they fornicate, they freeze, or they feed, right? And so whenever you think that you're overeating, that's the amygdala kicking in. When you're having issues with fear, that's the amygdala. When you're frozen, that's the amygdala. When you're angry, that's the amygdala. When you have a sex addiction or too much nookie, that's the amygdala, right? And the amygdala has these 5 components. So when the amygdala, the caveman, is turned on, the thinking one has to go to sleep, and the librarian isn't thinking very much. So it's either thinking person up or caveman person up, right? You ever get mad when you cross somebody in the freeway and they cut you off and you start yelling at them, all right? And you're like, dude, you didn't see me. But that's your thinking brain is shut off, but your amygdala is kicked in. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the archiving brain. So the librarian is this sort of subconscious mind. And his or her job is to take every single experience in your life, everything you've read, everything you've heard, seen, thought, experienced, everything, and put it like books in file cabinets behind you, right? Just little filing cabinets here and there, whatever happens. And it does all its job. Now, when the caveman is active, librarian has to work very slowly. When the thinking brain is active, librarian works very slowly. When the thinking brain is distracted and the caveman is asleep, the librarian works at its absolute ultimate best. So what you're talking about is, and by the way, when the thinking brain says, Jen, I need to fix something, and it goes off and plays jujitsu or goes for a walk or does something of that particular nature, is distracted, the archiving brain goes, oh, I got to give the thinking brain the answer. So it goes, this experience, this thing over here, this thing over here, brings it to the thinking brain, goes, here's the answer. And then you have the, I've got it, eureka moment. That's what you're referring to when you think about thinking how to do something. You're basically saying, look, you got to get the caveman to relax, right? No amygdala activation, right? Because we don't need that right now. And you've got to get the thinking brain to pose the question and then go and hang out and go play tennis or whatever have you. So the archiving brain, i.e. the subconscious mind, can do its job. This is why it's very critical to have this parsimonious activity and this sort of directed focus and thought. Most people don't get that. So what happens to most people? They have the thinking brain pops up, and then they get distracted or angry as to why they're not getting what they want. You get cognitive dissonance. The archiving brain can't do its job, and the caveman or cavewoman triggers. And so now they're living in this amygdala trigger. All they do is getting angrier, scared, frozen. Anxiety goes up, depression goes up, panic attacks. So you name it, it's more and more prevalent. The reason is because they're not letting the archiving brain do its job. Now, when we add mirror neurons to that and we add frequency vibrations to that, that's got a pretty powerful component. In fact, Hilt said that the subconscious mind was the only gateway between the brain of the human and what he called infinite intelligence, God, universe, whatever you have you. Because only can the archiving brain go outside of its purview and go out into the universe and pick other things. You've heard people say, so-and-so had an accident, now they speak full Japanese. Like how did that happen, right? Or this happened, and you have these weird sort of, unaccounted for, almost unexplained phenomena with certain human beings, certain times. People have terminal cancer and also they wake up the next day, it's gone, right? And you go, well, how did that happen? Well, we don't necessarily know, but one hypothesis is that the subconscious mind got hooked up to the vibrations of the superconscious or, infinite intelligence, God, whatever, and that changes the schematics. So I think thinking is very important, but how to think is even more important. And then action is even more important, because if you don't take action, what does it say to the universe?
It says you don't believe it, and therefore you're reinforcing the vibration. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, you're basically saying, not only do I not believe it, I don't want it.
So real quick, as an aside for people listening, because anyone that's come straight from my book, or even straight from a standard, if you can call it standard law of attraction book, I think a lot of this is new, and that a lot of this is familiar to me, but I've read so much different stuff outside of the confines of law of attraction. But what I believe is going on here, and the jury's going to be out until officially you read my book and you kind of make that decision. But I believe we are saying the same thing in different ways. Whereas, like it's like explaining like how are touchdowns scored. One person might be saying, well, sometimes they run the ball, sometimes they pass the ball, but one way or another they move the ball past the defense down to the end zone. Where another person would say, well, so you've got the coach running plays and you've got the offensive coordinator helping him here, and you've got this one guy on this end, and he knows to do XYZ. He runs this route and he catches the ball and boom. So it's kind of like we're explaining things in a different way, but it's kind of still going in the same direction. Again, you're gonna say something, yeah?
Walked away after. So, all right, so then let me throw another curve at you. Now, mind you, so I because I'm a business guy, right? And I'm not a motivational speaker by obviously, right? Because I'm a demotivational speaker, really, if you think about it. So I'm not a speaker, I'm not an author like you are. Right? I'm just sort of this business guy. And then through the law of attraction, if you would, I sold my company and then ended up now focusing on helping successful individuals double their income or double their time off full time, right? In 12 months or less. So my job, right, is to see these individuals and get them because doubling income is actually easier than people think. Doubling time off is not as easy because people get in their own way, right? So I have to deal with this sort of mindset on a daily basis, right? And I've got people that are billionaires as clients. I have people that had to borrow money to work with me. I've got the whole gamut, right? And we do have a 100% success rate thus far, knock on wood. So let me ask you this. Do you then believe that the law of attraction is something you turn on and off?
No. I think the only thing you turn on or off is your intentional focus on leveraging its power. I think it's running no matter what.
I agree with that. So the law of attraction really is the law of gravity, right? It's always constantly working. Okay,
Yes.
cool. So then for those in your audience, why would some of them argue they don't have what they want now?
Well, that's a good question. I honestly I don't have an answer. I don't know if you do. I don't have
I
an
do.
answer to that.
I do. They have exactly what they want.
Got it. Got it. So, and I guess we might be getting into, I don't know, semantics or getting granular here. It's like, well, do they like consciously they probably don't have what they want. Consciously they want something different. But you mean on a deeper level, if I'm understanding you correctly.
So, I mean, the thinking or the idea that the thinking brain and the archiving brain don't want the same thing is very true. And so they have exactly what they want because their amygdala or their archiving brain has been programmed to give them exactly what they want.
Hmm.
And if you think about it, changing what you want, truly changing what you want, changes the law of attraction in your favor if and when you change what you truly want. Now we can get into science. Look, I love reading, right? Because I'm a big geek, but I love reading because I like to find out what works. I read with a very different purpose in mind. I don't just read for reading's sake. I read for what can I get from this book, or better yet, what can the book get from me? How can I
Hmm.
utilize what I'm getting from the book to change my life for the better, right? So I read a lot of books. I mean, over 3,000 plus now, and they're great books and fantastic and yuppie yuppie, but very few have had an impact in my life, right? Very, very few. So then we asked the question, okay, well, then how do we determine what we truly want? And see, that really is the key, isn't it? The key is not invoking this law of attraction because you and I both agree law of attraction is already working. The key is how do we get it to work consciously for what we think we want? Now,
Hmm.
I don't ever want to be a billionaire. It's just not my thing, right? I don't want to be. In fact, I don't think I want to, do a lot of things people that think I should want to do, right? I don't. My house is 7,000 square feet. It's not 20,000 square feet, right? I used to have a private plane. I don't anymore, right? My car is a S550 Mercedes, 10 years old, right? It's not a Ferrari. So like I could buy all that stuff, obviously, but it's just not me. Knowing who you are is what probably better triggers the law of attraction than anything else.
Hmm.
Knowing who you really want to be or who you really genuinely are, even more so. I have a statue by Bobby Carlyle. It's called The Self-Made Man. And it's this sort of, I don't know, not clay, but most likely stone. And the guy is sort of chipping himself away, right? He's chipping at the unessential, whatever isn't him. And I think that's sort of our job is what is not us, right? What do we change? What do we remove so our true sense shows up?
Hmm.
So I would say, and you showed me with me some of your personal stuff, but I would say everybody used to look at their life right now and go, I have exactly what I want, everything. And even the bad stuff, because then you go, well, that's pretty liberating. Because if that's true, now I'm not saying it is true, But if we play with the hypothesis that it's true, what does that give you?
Because it gives you the power to change it if you want to.
It gives you control. And the biggest
Control,
fear
yeah.
is loss of control, right? So if it gives you control and you say, look, I've attracted this because of X, Y, and Z, or whatever the case, now you can change it, right? And this is the whole Stoic thing. It's not what happens, it's what you do about it that makes a difference. So the law of attraction, in my opinion, is always working. The question is, when we're getting what we're supposed to be getting, because that's what we really want. The question is that what we really want, and who do we want to become? So we have to
Mm.
clarify, who are we? What do we want? What do we stand for? Where are we going? And that changes, right? And then we simplify our lives. And then, of course, we maximize our talents and we leverage other people. So I would suspect that if the audience understands the law of attraction is always working and they're getting exactly what they want, they've got two choices. Either A, go, I'm good with where I am, and that's okay. I don't have to be this rich, famous individual. Or B, you know what? I want something else, or I want more. How do I now change my mindset to attract more? And that really is, I think, and I've been coaching now, golly, probably 13 years almost. And only full time only recently. But of all the people that I've coached, even all my employees, right? I mean, I probably have hundreds and hundreds of employees. The biggest thing you can ever do to anybody is change their mindset. And the mindset is what you believe about the world, yourself, and others. And if you
Mm-hmm.
change that belief, then everything changes for them. Now, we have a formula called the BPR formula. Did I share with you that last time?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And I'm talking fast because you said an hour, and I want to give your audience as much value as I
that, that the beauty of YouTube is they can actually slow down the speed, so they'll be good.
can. Right. So So the BBR formula is pretty simple. I did not invent it. Most of the things I really didn't invent. I either got from one of my mentors or somebody I paid or one of the books I read. So this came from from a guy who's a consultant to Apple, the military, and all these great companies. He gets paid $1 million a day to consult. So, and he's sort of like one of the, yeah, well, I hang out with some pretty cool people sometimes. And
Seriously.
he showed me this BBR formula. I hired him in one of my companies over 10 years ago, probably about 15 years ago. And we doubled my income in half a day. It was pretty cool. He brought in my staff and he did this sort of thing. And it was very sort of samurai-ish, if you would. That's where I learned a lot about the samurai and killing the ego and symbols, rituals, magic, code of conduct, all the strategic stuff that we do for businesses. I learned from him. Anyway, so he comes in and he shows me this. He goes, I'm going to give him a secret formula. I said, well, come on, Don, bring it on, right? So he draws 3 circles, a little circle in the bottom, a circle in the middle, and a circle in the top. On the circle, he puts the letter R. And he says to me, what do we all want? And he goes, it starts with an R. He goes, we all want this. Do you want to guess, Andrew?
See me, I'm coming from my perspective. I think relief. That's what I get from an R.
Well, it tells me a lot about you.
Yeah.
But he said it's results. Everything we want is results, right? And Jim Rohn said results is the name of the game. So I go, yep, got it. And I didn't figure it out either, by the way. Nobody ever figures it out. Very few, actually. And he goes, what drives results? And he put a B in the circle above the bottom circle. And I thought, that's interesting. And I actually did come up with this one, behavior. So results
Yes.
is all we want. It doesn't matter what we want. We want a result. And then
Mm.
results is now driven by behavior. So you got the circle here, and you got this little line between the circle. You got behavior results. You got behavior, and there's one more circle here, and he draws another B in it. And he
I
goes,
will say I think I almost got a cheat code because I may have heard a version of this, but I'm going with belief.
that's exactly right. Belief drives behavior. Behavior drives results. And you kind of go, duh. And he goes, most corporations focus on, and then he draws 2 little lines between the bottom circle and the middle circle, 2 little lines with 2 smaller circles. And he puts a C and a P in those circles. And he says, most companies focus here, content and process. He goes, they focus on content and process, but if you don't change the belief, you don't change the behavior, content and process are ineffective. Welcome to
Right.
bureaucracies. Welcome to big, overloaded companies that are slow and not so much profit, right? So belief is where it's at. Now, belief is what you hold to be true about yourself, others, and the world. So, based on your belief, if it changes your behavior, you get the results. Now, let's put that back over the law of attraction. So, if we look at the BBR formula, by the way, no caffeine. Can you imagine if I did caffeine?
We'll get 4 hours of content in one. We'll be
Right?
great.
Wow. No. So we look at this, and we look at the law of attraction. So, what you believe is what you're doing, is which is what attracting your results. When you look at the results, I tell my kids all the time, I don't need to ask somebody what they believe. I just simply watch what they do.
Right.
Right.
So I'm going to crawl into my audience's head and ask the obvious question now based on what you've said, because everyone's looking at their results and it's like, okay, this is what I believe and I don't like it. How, Marx, do I change my beliefs? And is that the right question?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think it may not be the right question, but I think it's a great question. And I think let's take a step back for a minute on results, right? So if you look at the results, Emerson said, "What you do speaks so loudly, I cannot hear what you say." So if we look at results and we sort of take an anthropological view, because one of the things that Don taught me was when you go into an organization or a company, you just simply sit with a sort of a pen and paper and you watch what they're doing and you catalog their behavior. And then you ascertain from the behavior what their belief system is. And you go, well, this behavior is producing this result, and this is what they believe in order to have that behavior. So you sort of work it backwards, right? And then you go, okay, well, if we want a different result, we want this result, we want results B versus A, and we need to have these behaviors, right, versus these behaviors. What do they have to believe in order to get that behavior? Does that make sense?
Yes.
I picked up a client. She's a great woman, and she's in network marketing. She's got a regular job. She's this big corporate, big wig, and then she got this network marketing, and she of course wants to double her income and double her time off. And she says to me, you don't have to get into inside my head and change my belief systems. I've got all the belief systems that I need. I said, okay, great. And, sure, right? Like, because I've seen this 1,000 times. But I say, okay, no problem. Great, super duper. It's going to show up eventually because it always does. And then I said, look, to start, we're going to rate your day by 4 categories. And you have to pick the 4 categories. So she picks love, she picks health, productivity, and finance, right, or wealth. I said, okay, great. Now you're going to give each category a point of 0 to 25. And then you're going to give me a number of how you're going to decide whether or not that's a 25, a 20, 19, or 15. Now, I don't tell them the categories. I have my own, but I don't ask them. I ask them to give me, right? So she goes, love, I want to spend time with my kids. I said, how much time? And that took 20 minutes. She goes, 40 minutes a day. Okay, great. Check that box, right? And you want to be healthy. She wants to weigh X weight. I won't share that because, in case she's listening. I said, okay, great, right? And for business, this is the number. So I'll always look for a number. So that when they text me in the morning, the previous day, 75, 100, 50, 20, whatever the case may be, right? And she starts texting me 20s and 20s and 15s and 20s and 25s, which tells you that she's not really achieving, right? So we have another phone call and I said, hey, look, what's going on? Well, and all these excuses come out, right? I said, I thought, and I always asked them, do you want me to sugarcoat it with you or should I be blunt? And they go, oh, be blunt. I said, fantastic. So let me ask you, you told me to be blunt. How do you figure you're going to achieve what you want to achieve if you're not hitting the marks every single day? Well, I said, okay, forget the excuses. What are you doing behavior-wise? And she starts telling me the behaviors. And I said, okay, well, what do you think you believe? And she tells me what she believes. Now, her behavior and beliefs are not the same. They're not congruent. They're incongruent. So I said, so-and-so, how then do you expect that this behavior over here, which is not conducive to these belief systems, are occurring? Well, I guess I really don't believe that. That's right. You don't believe that. Now, if you look at your behavior, what do you really believe? And then she goes, well, and then she starts to list her true beliefs, which are very powerful, by the way. I said, okay, great, fantastic. Where did you learn that? And then she goes, well, what do you mean where I learned that? Now, I'm trained in NLP and hypnosis and all that kind of stuff. And I said, you just saw that right there. She goes, what? I didn't see anything. And her eyes go up left, which means she's making a remembered picture. So I started figuring out where she learned each one of those beliefs, which was encoded in her amygdala. We talked about that earlier, right? In the reptilian brain, the archive, the caveman, or in any case, cavewoman brain. So she learned something. Now she wanted to weigh X, but she learned something entirely different that was programmed into her brain in the amygdala at 4 years of age that has carried her now to age 45. So no matter what she learns by reading, watching, whatever the case may be, that memory, that encoded learning is what's driving her behavior. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So first of all, do we want to change that? That's a question she needs to ask and answer. And then how do we change that is actually kind of simple. And there are many different ways in which to do it. We can use psychosensory therapy. We can use NLP, although it's harder to use NLP than it is to do psychosensory therapy. We can do all kinds of stuff to change that belief. But if we don't find out what the positive intention of that belief is, it will not change. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm. I'm following you so far.
So I lost my first fortune, right? And $10 million, making a few $1 million a year, $10 million cash, gone, done. And I know why I did it. And then when I tried to get back to, which is what caused me to double my income, double my time off, that's how the whole thing got started, right? Andrew was, I'd, become the sort of millionaire at age, 32. And then by age 37, I was a decamillionaire. By age 39, I'm broke. And I was like, maybe I was lucky. You've heard the story before, right? Maybe I was lucky. Maybe this, that, and the upper, yada, yada. And then for 2 years, I sucked my thumb and I worked really hard. I worked really, really hard. And I read all the books. I reread the books and what have you, went through my journals, figured out what I did, what I didn't do that was right. And then my wife asked a brilliant question. She's like, well, if you're doing this and working, why don't you just do the opposite? And she says she meant it literally. I don't know if that's true. I took it literally, but I'm not really sure if that's sort of what genuinely happened. But I took it literally. So I thought, well, that's interesting. So then I started thinking, what do I really believe? Because my behaviors, well, I believe to work really hard. I believe you've got to sell. I believe you've got to. So I wrote all these beliefs down that I had based on my behavior, right? Because I already had the BBR formula from Don previous years. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. So what's the opposite of that belief? And well, that I need to work less, not more. So I wrote that down. Very uncomfortable, by the way. That I got to put family first, not business. Wrote that down, right? Also uncomfortable, right? That freedom. And so I wrote all these things down. And I thought, okay, well, if I was to believe that, how would I behave? What would I do? And I wrote down the behaviors. I would do this, 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 this. And then I made a habit chart because I know discipline only lasts for a little bit. A habit chart of all these belief systems and these behaviors. And little by little, my income started to change. My lifestyle started to change. And then as I got smarter, I figured how to change belief system because I was doing it by willpower. And then I kept on reading, everything I could on the mind and on the brain and on psychology. And that's all a bunch of because that doesn't work. Right. And so I figured, I kept on reading, how do I change belief systems? And it was always applied to self first and then to others, right? Because I didn't have clients at the time. I had clients after I got back some of the money. A buddy of mine came and asked me, but it was how do I apply to self? This was all self-generated. Like how do I, it's like Wim Hof, right? Wim Hof discovered the breathing because he needed it, right? So I discovered the application of these principles, and I decided I'm going to write all these things down. And if they're not giving me symmetrical, meaning 5 times, right? Asymmetrical, 5 times more, I'm just going to discard them. So I only kept the things that gave me asymmetrical growth. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So to
Yeah.
answer your question, and I know it's sort of a long roundabout way, we have to figure out what do you truly believe now based on your behavior. Then what behavior do you think would be the proper behavior? And then what would you have to believe to do that? And then change your beliefs. You can either do it by willpower, you can do it in fact different ways. I like to use psychosensory therapy. I like to find out where they learned it. I like to depotentiate that from the amygdala by creating delta waves in the brain and then creating a new set of behaviors with the same delta waves into the amygdala with the new learning so it becomes automatic.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Very interesting stuff. Just a couple comments, and I know I'm going to throw each one I give you, you'll have an response to, but bear with me, just to kind of throw this out for the audience. Number one, in the middle of all this, I haven't had the chance just to mention it, but maybe I'm just projecting and putting words in your mouth, but part of what I'm getting out of this is also giving yourself permission to want what you really want. Meaning, like you were saying, like, you don't need a private jet. I think sometimes people think they want the private jet, for lack of a better term, because they think they're supposed to, versus maybe they just want a farm. Maybe they just want a cabin, or maybe they want that penthouse, like whatever it might be, but it's more about people giving themselves permission. I also think it's really, interesting and intriguing and powerful the way you describe things. And for me, it's such an interesting thing because, I never featured them on this channel, but I had a conversation with a we'll call him a mind modeler, and he's of the impression, and I don't know if he's saying the same thing as you or different, but in different ways, or who knows. He's of the mindset that behavior trumps beliefs, and that will kind of like do the heavy lifting for you. And me, I'm kind of like in the middle, where when I'm working with my audience, where I'll have them focus on gratitude and positive feelings, because that's one way for me, a simple, easy way of, and I don't know if depotentiating is the right word, but going that direction. So I think, yeah, you're saying?
No, no. So I understand. So 2 things. Belief trumps, behavior trumps belief is kind of a silly comment, right? Because behavior is driven by beliefs. It doesn't trump beliefs. It's just, I think what he's trying to say is that if you behave differently, beliefs will change. I can get behind that, right?
Yeah.
But behavior trumps belief.
And not to speak for him, but I think he's on board with that also. I think that's what he meant.
I think what he's meaning to say is that, hey, look, whatever you tell me you believe isn't true. It's what you're doing that is what you believe, right? So I agree with that. Depotentiate. So the amygdala creates neurochemicals based on a trigger of complex and simple content. In other words, anchors trigger behaviors, emotions, and feelings. And if the amygdala gets triggered, it bypasses the neocortex, goes straight to the amygdala, and it creates a chemical response, adrenaline, norepinephrine, cortisol, all these things, right? Which then trigger the body and shut down the brain. So this is a chemical component. Depotentiating means that you kick out these things called AMPA receptors, which are triggering that emotion or that belief. And delta waves create something called calcium glutamate, which depotentiate, which de-link that trigger from the AMPA receptor. So next time the trigger shows up, the AMPA receptors don't kick in. So it's a biological chemical response in our brain that we're changing, not just a quote unquote belief, which is really all beliefs are chemical responses, by the way. So duh. So I think it's important for us to understand that, you know, what we say can be brought down to evidentiary, factual pieces of how the brain works. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that you and I, let me give an example. So you asked about giving people permission, that gives themselves permission to figure out what it is they truly want. I don't know that permission is the right word for me. Might be for you, might be from your audience. I don't think it is for me. Let me kind of tell you what I think is going on, because I think understanding the reality then makes us go, oh, got it. When I was diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic a year ago, April last year, I'm 51 now. I mean, that doesn't happen usually, right? You had all of these people with all these ideas and all these components. You know, the American Diabetic Association says one thing, Dr. Richard Bernstein says something else, this guy. So I had to sort of siphon through all the BS to find out what is reality, right? Once I know what reality is, then I can go, okay, now I can take the necessary actions because I've ascertained the proper beliefs to get at what it is that I want. Imagine now it's 1938 and you're the author of Think and Grow Rich, named Napoleon Hill. And you just, your depression is happened, right? You're about to enter this sort of World War II, but you don't know it yet, right? You've written this huge volume, very successful, you became rich, but then you lost it all in the depression. Now you're working for president, and you sit at the steps of the Abraham Lincoln Memorial, 1938. So think about 1938, right? There's barely anything happening in 1938, right? No technology, nothing. And you now demand to speak to the devil. And you're like, okay, I'm going to interview you, and you got no choice but to tell me what I want to know. And you sit there in the Lincoln Memorial with a pen and paper, and out comes this character with no body, right? And you start asking him questions. How do you do this? Why do you do this? All the and the devil says, I can't control you, Napoleon Hill, because you understand the secret of beating me. And Napoleon Hill goes, that's true. And then Napoleon Hill says, how do you control other people? And he laughs. Well, that's easy. Through the schools, through the churches, through alcohol, through cigarettes, through the newspapers. I control the majority of the people that way. And we call them drifters because they lack definiteness of purpose. But those who take possession of their own mind for whatever aims they choose, says the devil, they have the antidote to me. So what's happening in my perspective, based on my years of coaching and my own personal experiences, you've got these outside voices, Instagram, your neighbor, your preacher, your school, right, your friend, all these voices, your parents. I mean, I went to law school because my mom wanted me to be an attorney, but then I dropped out because I realized I didn't want to be an attorney. You have all these voices telling you what you should do and what you should be like and what's important. And sometimes, very rarely, is there a congruent connection between what they say and what you truly want. But most of the time, there are competing voices. That's what's happening. So in order to find out what you truly desire, you have to shut those voices out, pay no attention to them. And we do that in kind of unique ways, and find out what does, Andrew, what does Marx, what does so-and-so truly want? Once you know what you want, once you get focused in all the areas, right? Personal growth, health, fitness, finance, relationships, parenting, whatever areas of your life you're involved in. Once you understand what it is you truly want, now the law of attraction starts to kick in automatically because you have shed away all the things that aren't you. So it's not about giving yourself permission. It's about realizing there's two voices, the outside voices and the inside voices. And the inside voice will say, Andrew, we want you to make this much money. But then it might go, no, we want this much money. And then we want this much money. We want this, we want that. Well, who knows, right? I used to wear suits. Like I had these beautiful, super expensive suits. I don't do that. This is now, I think, Walmart or Target, and this is Lululemon. So, whatever. But, and I don't care. I go to meetings. I don't wear suits. It's not who I am today. It might change a week from now. It might change a year from now. I don't know. But by allowing myself to truly understand what it is that really makes me happy and productive, I'm able to utilize the law of attraction at a higher, to your quote, vibration than most people because I'm not trying to be something I'm not. I don't want to work all the hours that God sent me. So if I can make an extra $100 million by working more, not interested, not even close. But the better question is, how do I double my income and double my time off, which
Mm.
implies you have more fun? I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I kind of wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you did. Well, it's kind of funny. I'll ask these questions, and the whatever answer comes out is the perfect one because right there was basically a ton of gold and value for people to kind of sift through and get through a perspective. And also, you were the very first person that I've ever interviewed who snuck in a nod to Napoleon Hill's "Outwitting the Devil" book, which some people don't even know that exists. So, little extra props there, Marks.
Thank you.
Um,
It's a phenomenal book. I mean, you've read
yeah,
it, obviously. Might be one of Napoleon Hill's more important pieces. Remember, he wrote it in 1938. He went to his wife. His wife said, "You can't publish it; it'll ruin you. They think you're a nutcrack."
yeah,
And then
they
when
hid it for decades.
he married Annie Lou Hill, and she said, "You can't publish this. They'll think you're in crack." He died in 1970. She died many years afterwards. Her niece took over Napoleon Hill Foundation. She told the niece, "You can't publish this." Finally, after the niece died, she told nobody else not to publish it. And of course, Sharon Lecter was contacted by Napoleon Hill Foundation in 2009, I think it was, to read the book. And Sharon Lecter's comments, I think, are kind of weak, in my opinion. But the book itself, it's the fact that he elucidates this idea of competing energy and competing forces all of the time,
Hmm.
right, inside our minds.
Yeah.
And being able to, I mean, think about it, Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, right? It was the same thing. It was, the hero is the person who seeks their own happiness based on what it is that they want. But knowing what you want isn't always so easy, is it?
Well, not with the competing voices, right? You get so many, there's so many things popping at you. And I think you're speaking to a really important message and a really key vital piece in the context of law of attraction because it's all about focus, right? And it's really important for everyone to understand or at least ask the question of where are competing voices, distractions, where are things that are competing with what I really want on whatever level you want to call, whether it's a soul level or whatever it might be. Where else is this coming from? Can I spot it? Can I identify it? And can I honor who I really am as a person? Which that's the only thing that's going to make me happy anyway.
So, so when I first started doing this by accident, right? Accident, quote unquote, they used to, somebody coined the term that I was a business and strategic coach or lifestyle business strategist is what they called me at the time, right? This is now 10 plus years ago. And I thought, I was like, that's cool. I like the whole strategy component. It's kind of neat. And it makes things easy for me because I could just say, go this, do this, move these pieces, whatever have you. But it didn't work, right? The first 12 months of my first client, nothing worked. I shared this with you. I gave him everything I was doing and all my formulas, and nothing was working. And then finally I figured out that we needed to add mindset to the equation. Then everything began to work beautifully. So I think the interesting piece is not that we look at the law of attraction as the pinnacle of the key to all success, but rather that we understand that law of attraction is a indication, a diagnostic of what is working or not working in our lives. And therefore, we look at the pieces that we're doing or not doing. And then the law of attraction gives us something different. So, in other words, it's kind of like saying this, okay, look, Andrew, we know that the law of attraction is working in your life. Well, of course it is. Great, super duper. So write down all the things that's happening in your life that you're getting. Well, I've got this. Okay, wonderful. Is that what you want? Well, yes, I want these pieces, but I don't want these pieces here. Okay, cool. So the pieces you don't want, what are you doing to get those pieces? Or what are you not doing? Oh, I'm doing this or not doing this. Okay, great. What would you have to do or not do to get these pieces? Well, I would have to either do or not do this. Okay, fantastic. What do you have to believe in order to do or not do those things to get these pieces? This right here. Okay, great. How do we install these beliefs versus these beliefs? So then the law of attraction goes, oh, this is what you want, not that. Okay, well, let's go get that instead versus getting this on this side. Oftentimes that competition, law of attraction goes, make up your freaking mind. You want this, you want this, you want this. And so it gives you neither or both of the things simultaneously, which is very inefficient and ineffective. So it's the law of attraction is a diagnostic tool because it's always working to find out what are you attracting now. And now, what do you really want to attract? Not what do you think, quote unquote, you want to attract. What do you really want to attract based on what your desires are? So, you and I've had this discussion. I don't believe in any debt. I have no debt, right? My car is paid for, my house is paid for. I have no debt. I don't believe in debt. Why? Some people say, well, that's stupid, Marx. The house is not an asset; it's a liability, right? If you listen to Kiyosaki and some other authors, well, they may be right. And you could take that money and invest it somewhere else to get a better return for you. Okay, cool. You may be right too. But I don't give a what. That's you, buddy. That's not me. I don't need to listen to your voice. For me, mindset wise, psychologically, I like knowing. I like feeling that I don't have any debt. Does that mean I can make 10% less a year on my investments?
Yeah, well, as I say, I think it's an important example. Whether or not people want to follow your lead, I think it's very important for me to note here. Case is not obvious, even though it is, that you're coming from such a level of abundance. The reason it doesn't matter is because you've got plenty of money for you. You're not trying to prove anything. You're not trying to prove anything to anyone. But even if you needed to, because you've been operating so abundantly, you've got the money to do that. Not that you ever would. So even if there was debt, and there isn't, but because you understand that that would put a lackful feeling and would throw things off for you, your house can never be a liability because you've got too much. You've got, you can just buy a new one. You can trade up. You don't worry about it. For you, you've transcended that level of lack that a lot of people hold to regarding their home, regarding property and things of that nature.
So well said. And let's talk about money. Money is a medium of exchange for value, right? So I have an iPhone. I love my iPhone. It's an iPhone 12, whatever the latest one is, right? Super cool. Some people like Droid, right? And this gives me value. The Droid gives them value. Who's right, who's wrong? It doesn't matter, right? So I give Apple my money because they give me back more value than I think I'm paying for that money. So money basically means that somebody's giving you something because they're getting back more perceived value, whatever that means to them, than that they're giving you. Make sense?
Yes.
They get to choose. Do I buy this or do I buy that? Do I buy X and whatever? Okay, cool. So if that's true, and we want more money, because I always want more money, but not for the reasons most people think they want more money for. So if you want more money, what does that really mean?
You want more value.
You
You
want more
want more.
value?
Well, you want to experience more. I mean, you want to, and here I'm just, I'm riffing. Like you
I
want to
know.
enjoy life more, really.
So, okay. So now let's flip it on its head. You said, if I understood you correctly, that if you want more money, you want more value.
Yeah, and I was
How?
just jumping off your words. Like really, you
No,
want to
no,
enjoy life more.
no. Okay. So how about the opposite? How about if you want more money, you want to give more value, right? Because the only way you can attract money is by delivering more value to somebody else. So the person makes this much money, they're delivering that much value by somebody else. So it makes this much money, that much value. Now, we're not putting any moral connotation whether this person provides, a better product than this person. That's nothing to do with it, right? It's perceived value, right? People buy the dumbest things all the freaking time, right? But they think it's value, and I'm thinking, I would never buy that. It's like, and I don't want to put things out there because I don't want to offend anybody necessarily, but somebody buys something, I go, I would never spend that money on that stuff. To me, it's stupid, right?
Mm-hmm.
For them, it's not, right? They've been hypnotized, if you would. We can talk about that. But hypnotized to think that those really expensive pairs of shoes are valuable. They're freaking not, right? They're horrible. They're just stupid. But in their mind, they do. So I want more money because that tells me that I figured out how to give more value. So I'm giving rather than receiving. The money's just letting me know what's happening. It's, hey, hey, Marx, guess what? You don't get any money because you didn't provide any value. Bummer. Hey, guess
Right.
what? You got a lot of value because you got a lot of money because you put a lot of value. So when you talk about the law of attraction, really it's becoming more valuable, meaning that you can now give more value to others, multitude, whatever the case may be, so that then you get back more money. But the money isn't the issue. The money is not, the money shows up automatically if you provide more value. So, when my coaching is, not cheap, as you know, but we have 100% success rate, right? Now, there's a trick I use in that respect, right? I make them pay it all up front for 12 months, right? Now, when they pay all up front in 12 months, what value does that create inside their brain?
High value. Like this must work. And by the way, I'm going to make it work for what I just paid.
Exactly. That's why we have 100% success rate, right? Well, that and a bunch of other stuff that we would do a good job. It's not just paying up front and we leave. Their mind gets set like fertile to plant the seed of you're about to get a tremendous amount of value, more so than you realize, because you've paid this dollar out. And now let's get to work. So we shift that belief system instantaneously. And now they're thinking, well, I've paid X number of dollars for whatever this is. I'm going to make it work. So then when I poke and change and prod, and when I give somebody, how to set a saga for their business or the code of conduct or symbols or rituals or magic, all these things to change the belief system of their employees, they're going to put it in effect. If they don't, they can't blame me for it. It's on them, right? So we create this value by demanding more from other people and demanding more from ourselves in a shorter period of time. Because, think of it this way, Andrew. If I said, hey, can you double your income? You go, yeah, but I would suggest you don't want to. You're happy with your current life right now.
Mm-hmm.
X, you're doing Z, like too much work. We've had this discussion, right? Like, all these components. But if I said, hey, Andrew, what if you could double your income and work less? Now you're thinking, okay, well, now I'm intrigued, right? Because all progress is made by getting more from less. Computers are smaller with more capacity, right? Watch, if you look at everything in technology, it's more, they get more value with less in the physical world and mental world. So then your brain goes, ooh, I like that. Because more with more is unattractive. More with more is, stressful and it's just not happy. But more with less, that is an interesting proposition. And now you say, okay, great. How do I do that? And then you start to figure out, well, how do we make these principles and these tools, techniques, tricks, blah, 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 work to get more from less? And now that becomes a very exciting proposition to always try to get higher income with less. This is how you provide more value. Fast food restaurants, just basically a restaurant without the waiters, right? The Sony Walkman was basically, a boom box without the speakers. We can go down the road, right? These are all Richard Koch examples. We can go down the road as to how technology has advanced and human benefits have advanced with more with less. But in our own lives, we think more with more, which is completely the opposite of how things actually work.
By the way, and I mean this in a good way, is why I want to keep us to an hour, because I want to make sure my audience can digest this, because you're dropping a ton of value and a lot of really important insights for people to kind of let marinate, in my opinion. Now, with that said, we've gone down a lot of roads here, and you've offered so much. Is there something that I haven't asked you in, or direction I haven't taken you in, that you think it's important for a law of attraction audience to hear right now?
Yeah, I think the question is, why do most people, 99.99999%, fail?
What, in your opinion, is the reason?
They're not failing. They're not failing. They think they're failing because they have this idea of what they want versus what they currently have. But if they get to the epiphany that they have exactly what they want, and then decide, yes, I want that, or no, I don't want that, and what I really want, and make a small step, they then can focus a law of attraction from current, results to different results. People have to stop thinking about failure and success as a zero-sum game. Think of it as success all the way around, only are you clear in what you truly want? And if so, are you behaving in the way that gets you what you truly want?
I love it. Before we popped on, I was just like thumbing through Instagram, and one thing I thought, I'm like, yeah, I wonder what Marx will think of this. Someone put up one of their quotes and says, sometimes self-care means doing more, sometimes it means doing less. And as I say that, any final, like, how's that? I mean, I'm sure it resonates, but how's it resonating with you? Any final thoughts you want to piggyback off of that as we head on out?
There's only four ways to change your life. There's only four ways to change anything in your life. You know what it is: start something new, stop something, do more of something, or do less of something. Start, stop, more or less. So all these sayings are cute and whatever have you, and they're kind of fun and stuff. But I also believe that if you figure out in your life what makes you happy and what makes you successful in terms of your definition, just do more of that, and then everything else will be less or stopped. And if you're doing something that you don't like to do or don't want to do, ask yourself, why am I doing it? Where did I learn that? A great question is, where did I learn that? Because you might be a smoker. And by the way, I don't have Instagram. I mean, I post things, but I never check Instagram. I never check Twitter. I never check Facebook. I don't check any of those social media sites. I don't check the news. It's trying to persuade my brain, I don't have enough. I'm not good enough. These things are problematic. The world's coming to an end. All these horrible things. I don't need that in my brain. I've got enough, going on in there. I don't need more junk in there, right? So I don't do any of that stuff. I post, but I don't check it out. I think it's important for us to realize that if we look at our lives as to what we are now, we may be okay with it. We may be okay with the way things are, or we may not be okay with it. The question becomes, if you're not okay with it, what are you going to do that's different? Not what are you going to think that's different? What are you going to do that's different? And ask yourself the question, where did I learn that? If you're a smoker and you don't want to smoke, where did I learn that? And you're gonna have an image pop in your mind about you were little and you saw a movie and you thought that guy was cool, or your dad smoked, and you're gonna go, boy, I learned it somewhere else. I didn't really decide to do it. I learned it somewhere else. Well, that was a behavior you had at one time with an intended purpose. And then ask yourself, okay, well, what's the purpose of smoking? It makes me feel good and calms me down, whatever the case would be. How do I get the same purpose fulfilled with a better, different behavior that gets me somewhere else? So, I'm a big believer in slowing time down, right? Because almost all my life I sped my time up, and I learned it from my mom. Yeah, but she was always manic about everything. I was like, well, that's stupid, right? But I learned that's how I learned. I learned that's how you're supposed to engage with the world. Well, guess what? It's not the best way to engage with the world. The best way to get you is to slow things down. So I thought, okay, what do I have to believe? And then I realized that in order to slow things down, guess what has to happen? You got to focus on less. Remember when we were little kids and they came, hey, you want to go play Andrew? And you're a little kid and you go outside and you play, and summers lasted an eternity. So did school, by the way, right? And so did the class. You looked at the clock and went click, click, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Because we had so few things in our mind to focus on that we didn't have to, time passes by quickly when your brain goes through many thoughts at one time, right? Time slows down when there's focus. So I thought, well, isn't that interesting? The less stuff I have to worry about, the less stuff I have to think about, the less stuff that has to be in my life, i.e., mortgage payments, car payments, right? The less it shows up in my world, the more I can slow time down. And the more I can slow time down, the more I can achieve in those things that matter to me. So I get this huge proportionate, effort for reward, right? Less effort, way greater reward, because there's less for me to do, less things to focus on, right? I have 2 appointments today, you, and then I've got a guy, Dr. Ben, who's going to work me out, 15-minute workout, because I'm all about efficiency. It's astrometrics, it's pretty cool stuff. Anyway, and that's it. The rest of the day is up to me to do whatever I want to do, whatever I find interesting, useful, call clients, don't call clients, whatever I want. So I think we have to sort of get off this high horse of more with more, work harder, push harder, rather slow things down, minimize the level of focus we have, change our behavior to get us the results we want by looking at our belief system and modifying those, and going for just a few things that really matter to us, not 50, just a few things, and then we can achieve a lot more with a lot less, if that makes sense. And the law of attraction will help us get there.
Yeah, and piggybacking on that just a little bit, I want to invite the audience right now to even stop and take a breath and even notice, are you breathing fast right now? Or are you breathing nice and slow? Because that might have been an unexpected hidden indicator and a little opportunity at a little bit more self-awareness. Because you first of all, Mark, I couldn't narrow things down to one word or one phrase, all the amazing insights you've delivered today. But a big one that I get out of it is the value of self-awareness, because through that, so much more becomes possible, or in a good way, so much less. We mean that in that good way becomes possible, and that we're worrying about a lot less stuff, but we're also enjoying our life a lot more in that way. And I really want to thank you for taking time out. And it's interesting because you'll agree, yeah, you have me and this other person, but by that same token, your time is very valuable. And I appreciate you taking time out today to have this conversation, to share your insights. And these are hard fought insights. This is hard fought wisdom and life experience. I appreciate you sharing that with me and my audience so that people can hopefully pick up even 1 or 2 of the number of insights that you've dropped off and use it to their advantage. Thank you so much, Marx, for coming on today. I truly, truly appreciate you, my friend.
Oh, no, buddy. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And I think, to your point, this is a interview, a podcast that probably should be listened to more than once or twice or 3 or 4 or 5 times. Not because I'm so great or anything of nature, because the principles we have laid down are plentiful, but they're really important. And I get to experience people changing their lives, working less and making more. Some of these guys are really wealthy, some of these guys are not. But seeing their quality of life change, that to me is worth everything.